Everything goes to Natalie. The attorney's words landed so heavily that no one moved. My father leaned across the polished table. That's impossible. Read it again. There is nothing to read again, Mr. Hale replied. Benjamin Carter named Natalie as the sole beneficiary of his estate. My mother turned toward me so sharply that her chair scraped the floor. What did you do to him? I didn't do anything. Don't lie. Her voice rose as relatives began whispering behind us. Benjamin's businesses, his investments, that mansion, $95 million, and he left all of it to you. I stared at the signed documents in front of the attorney. Until that moment, I had expected an old photograph, perhaps one of Uncle Benjamin's watches. I had never imagined he would leave me his entire life's work. My father pointed at me. You will transfer everything to us. Mr. Hale closed the folder. The assets belong to Natalie. No one else has authority over them. For the first time in my life, my parents gave an order that someone else could not force me to obey. I looked at my father and said, no. His face changed. And before that night ended, I would learn exactly what refusing him would cost me. Outside the attorney's office, my mother grabbed my arm. You embarrassed us in there. I only answered Dad. You are 29 years old, she hissed. You know nothing about managing that kind of money. I work in financial compliance. That does not make you capable of controlling a family fortune, my father said. Benjamin's wealth belongs to the family. You will sign it over, and we will decide how it is used. Uncle Benjamin had been the only person in our family who never spoke to me as though my life required parental approval. When I chose my career, my parents called it impractical. Benjamin helped me prepare for my first interview. When they pressured me to surrender part of every paycheck, he quietly told me that generosity without choice was control. Still, standing in that parking lot, I almost apologized for inheriting something I had never requested. Then my father handed me a business card. Our attorney will prepare the transfer documents tonight. I pushed the card back toward him. I'm not signing anything. My mother's expression went cold. Then don't come home. I thought it was another threat designed to frighten me. It was. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, 4 black garbage bags sat on the front steps. My suitcase rested beside them. The front door lock had already been changed. My father opened the door just far enough to look at me. You can return when you are ready to behave like a daughter. Then he shut it. I stood beneath the porch light with everything I owned packed like trash. My phone vibrated with a message from Mr. Hale. Go to Benjamin's house. He expected this. The mansion stood 40 minutes away, dark behind iron gates. Mr. Hale had given me the keys after the will reading, though I had barely heard his instructions at the time. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the silent entrance hall. A lamp was glowing in Benjamin's study. My stomach tightened. I walked toward it and found 3 desk drawers hanging open, papers scattered across the carpet, and muddy footprints leading toward the back of the house. Someone had reached the mansion before me. I froze in the study doorway. Hello? No one answered. I picked up the brass letter opener from Benjamin's desk and moved through the room slowly. The muddy footprints stopped near the back entrance, where the door stood slightly open. Whoever had been there was already gone. Nothing obvious seemed missing. Benjamin's watch collection remained locked behind glass. His laptop was still on the desk, but 3 drawers had been searched, and a stack of estate papers had been disturbed. Beneath them, I found an envelope with my name written across the front. Natalie. My hands shook as I opened it. If you are reading this, then you came here because someone made you feel you had nowhere else to go. I sank into Benjamin's chair. The letter said the mansion was never meant to feel like a prize. He wanted it to be a safe place, a home no one could take from me because I had disappointed them. Then came the line that made me stop breathing. Your parents may tell you my decision was a mistake. It was not. Do not sign anything they place in front of you. He gave no explanation. Only a final instruction to trust Mr. Hale until the full estate review was complete. I barely slept. By morning, my phone held 37 missed calls and dozens of messages. My aunt accused me of stealing from a grieving family. A cousin called me selfish. My mother wrote, "Fix this before you lose everyone." My father's message was shorter. "Meet us today. Bring the documents." Instead, I called Mr. Hale. "Someone searched the house," I said. There was a pause. "Do not touch anything else," he replied. "Benjamin prepared for this exact situation. I'm coming over." What did he know? Before he could answer, the call cut off. Then engines rumbled beyond the gates. I looked through the window and saw my parents stepping from the first car. Behind them came several relatives carrying luggage, folders, and a locksmith carrying a metal toolbox. My father didn't wait for me to come outside. He marched to the front gate and pointed toward the mansion. "That house belongs to the Carter family," he shouted. "Open the gate." I stayed inside the front doorway, looking through the glass. No. Neighbors across the street slowed their morning walks. Curtains opened. Within minutes, people were watching from nearby driveways. My mother folded her arms. Benjamin wasn't thinking clearly during his final months. Everyone knows that. Several relatives nodded immediately. "He never would have cut out his own brother," one aunt added loudly. "Natalie manipulated him." The accusation hit me like a slap. "I hardly saw Uncle Benjamin compared to all of you," I answered through the intercom. "You know that's not true." "That doesn't matter," my father snapped. "You're keeping what belongs to everyone." He turned toward the locksmith. "Change the locks." The man hesitated. I need proof that you own the property." "I am his brother." "That isn't proof," the locksmith replied carefully. My father pulled out a folder. "We'll have proof soon enough." Just then, a black sedan rolled through the open gate. Mr. Hale stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. His expression remained calm as he approached my parents. "Good morning," he said evenly. "You're standing on Miss Carter's private property." "She has no right to this house," my father replied. "She has every legal right." Mr. Hale removed a certified copy of the probate order and handed it to the locksmith. "The estate has already recognized Natalie Carter as the lawful owner. Any attempt to alter locks, enter the property without permission, or remove belongings constitutes trespassing." The locksmith glanced at the paperwork, then quietly closed his toolbox. "I can't do this job." He walked back toward his van. My father's face reddened. "This isn't over," he barked. "We'll challenge the will." "You're free to pursue legal remedies," Mr. Hale answered. "But until a court rules otherwise, the estate belongs entirely to Natalie." One of my aunts stepped forward. "Benjamin must have been pressured. Show everyone why he made this decision." Mr. Hale looked directly at her. Benjamin anticipated that question. He paused just long enough for everyone to become silent. He personally recorded a formal statement explaining every reason behind his estate plan. The relatives immediately began talking over one another. "Then play it." "Yes, let's hear it." My father smiled confidently. "Exactly. Once everyone hears that recording, they'll know she influenced him." Mr. Hale shook his head. "The recording will be presented at the appropriate legal proceeding, not on the front lawn." My father laughed dismissively. "You're hiding it because it won't survive scrutiny." He spun toward the remaining relatives. "Forget this nonsense. We're going inside." He took 3 determined steps toward the front entrance. Without raising his voice, Mr. Hale spoke one sentence. "I strongly suggest nobody touches that front door." My father ignored him. "Move," he said, brushing past Mr. Hale toward the front gate. He reached through the bars and tried to force the electronic latch open from the inside. A sharp alarm sounded across the property. Before anyone could react, 2 uniformed security officers emerged from a side building and walked quickly toward the entrance. "Sir," one of them said firmly, "step away from the gate." My father folded his arms. "This is my brother's house." "No," the officer replied. "It is Miss Carter's property. You're trespassing." "This is ridiculous," my mother snapped. "She's our daughter." "That doesn't change ownership." One of my cousins muttered, "Just open the gate and get it over with." Instead, the second security officer spoke quietly into his radio. "Unauthorized entry attempt confirmed. Request local police assistance." The mood changed instantly. Several relatives took a step backward. Others began arguing with my father. "You said we were just talking. You never mentioned security." Across the street, more neighbors had gathered. A teenager lifted his phone and began recording. Within minutes, 3 more people were filming the confrontation from the sidewalk. For the first time that morning, my father looked uncertain. Inside the house, Mr. Hale turned to me. "Come with me." He led me into Benjamin's private library and unlocked a wall safe hidden behind a framed landscape painting. Inside were several thick binders, sealed envelopes, and neatly labeled document boxes. "These aren't the financial records," he explained. "They're Benjamin's personal instructions." He handed me the first binder. Across the cover were 7 typed words. "If Richard and Diane challenge my estate." I slowly opened it. Inside was a detailed timeline documenting conversations Benjamin had with my parents over several years. There were dated notes, copies of letters, and summaries of meetings in which they repeatedly pressured him to rewrite his will. My heart sank with every page. "He knew this would happen," I whispered. "He expected it," Mr. Hale replied. "That's why he planned every step carefully." Before I could ask another question, shouting erupted outside again. I looked through the library window. Police cruisers had arrived. An officer was speaking with my father, while another questioned several relatives separately. Even then, my father pointed toward the mansion and declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'll sue her for every dollar. This isn't over." As officers began escorting everyone back toward the street, another black luxury sedan rolled slowly through the open gate. It stopped beside Mr. Hale's car. An older gentleman in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out. The moment my father saw him, the color drained from his face. My mother's mouth fell open. Neither of them said a word for several seconds. Finally, my father barely managed to whisper, "What are you doing here?" The older gentleman closed the car door behind him with unhurried confidence. I had never met him before, but my father clearly had. "Good morning, Richard," he said evenly. "It's been a long time." My father took an involuntary step backward. You're supposed to be overseas." I returned because Benjamin asked me to. He extended his hand toward me. "My name is Charles Whitmore. Benjamin and I built our first company together nearly 40 years ago. I am the co-trustee of every major business he left you." I shook his hand, still trying to understand why my parents looked terrified. Charles turned to Mr. Hale. "Shall we finish what Benjamin started?" Mr. Hale nodded. The police officers, several relatives, and even curious neighbors remained nearby as Mr. Hale opened his briefcase. "Since Mr. Carter has publicly challenged the validity of Benjamin's estate plan," he said, "it's appropriate to clarify why these protections exist." He removed a sealed folder. For years, Benjamin documented repeated attempts to pressure him into changing his will. My father interrupted. "Those are private family conversations." "They became legal evidence when they concerned coercion," Mr. Hale replied. One by one, he presented copies of letters, emails, and meeting notes Benjamin had preserved. They showed my parents repeatedly asking him to guarantee personal loans, urging him to transfer ownership interests, and insisting Natalie was too inexperienced to inherit anything directly. Charles quietly added, Benjamin refused every request. My aunt looked at my father. You told us he promised to divide everything equally. He never did, Charles answered before my father could speak. In fact, Benjamin became increasingly concerned that Richard and Diane intended to pressure Natalie into surrendering any inheritance she received. Silence spread through the crowd. Mr. Hale then removed a tablet. Benjamin also left a recorded statement. He pressed play. My uncle appeared on the screen, sitting in the very library where I had opened his letter only hours earlier. If you're watching this, Benjamin began, then I'm no longer here to explain my decision myself. He smiled gently. Natalie, none of this is a reward. It's a responsibility. I chose you because you never treated me as a bank account. You visited without asking for anything. You listened when I needed company. You earned my trust through your character. I felt tears gathering before I realized I was crying. Benjamin continued. To Richard and Diane, I know you will disagree with this decision. That is your right, but it is not your right to take from Natalie what I freely chose to leave her. He paused. For years, you asked me to rewrite my will. You suggested loans I never approved. You repeatedly argued that Natalie should never control significant assets because she would eventually give them to you. That is precisely why I made certain she never could. The recording ended. No one spoke. Several relatives slowly turned toward my parents. One cousin shook his head. You told us Natalie manipulated him. Another quietly said, he saw through all of us. My mother opened her mouth, but no words came. My father stared at the ground. The confidence that had carried him to the mansion that morning was gone. Over the following months, their legal challenge failed exactly as Benjamin had planned. The court upheld every provision of the estate. Every safeguard Benjamin created worked exactly as intended. My parents were ordered to pay substantial legal costs after their claims were rejected. More painful than losing the lawsuit was losing the trust of the family members they had misled. Several relatives called to apologize. Others admitted they had believed my parents without ever asking me for my side. I accepted the apologies that felt sincere. The rest I quietly left behind. As for me, I hired experienced professionals to manage Benjamin's companies while I continued working for a while in the career I loved. Not because I needed the paycheck anymore, but because I wanted to prove to myself that my identity had never depended on money. Benjamin's mansion slowly became a home instead of a battlefield. I restored the gardens he loved. I filled the dining room with friends, mentors, and people who cared about one another instead of what someone might inherit. Most importantly, I expanded the charitable foundation Benjamin had started, creating scholarships and financial education programs for young adults escaping financially controlling families, the very kind of future he had quietly hoped I would build. I never spoke to my parents again about the estate. There was nothing left to argue about. The court had settled the legal questions. Benjamin had settled the moral ones. The night my parents left my belongings in garbage bags, they believed they had taken away my future. What they never understood was that my uncle had spent years protecting it long before they ever tried to take it away.